Welcome to Still Growing in Grace, a program dedicated to inspiring joy, giving hope, and delighting in grace. I'm Mike Zenker, and I'll be sharing with you a message of hope that will expand your understanding of God's love and amazing grace. God already deeply loves you, totally accepts you, and really, really likes you. Growing in Grace Ministries Canada and Hope Fellowship, your community church, invite you to enjoy today's program as we dig deeper into what it means to be still growing in grace. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. If you're tuning in at the beginning there, I didn't realize I was live. I didn't think I turned it on. I was still getting settings ready. I was editing a video, and it was like cutting it close, hoping to be ready. It's like, So anyway, I hope all is well with you in wherever you're living. I see Robert in Windsor has chimed in early. You're first one in. So good morning, Robert. Hope you're doing well. So I was kind of struggling with what to share this morning because first I didn't do any interviews ahead of time, and this week is probably my most insane week of the year. So I'm hoping to, come December 1st, there's a big slowdown I have to make just to, stay sane, and I'm looking forward to it. I got some Christmas plans, like the series and all that stuff all figured out, which is really cool. And working on the forgiveness conference coming up called Healing Life's Hurts Through Understanding Forgiveness. This will be a really, really exciting conference. Let me see if I can find a picture, because I have something somewhere here that, I know where it is. I want to tell you who our guests are. I think you're going to be excited about this. I'm personally thrilled. So let me find the document. Here we go. Aha. Okay. So right now we've got on the poster will be alphabetical so that nobody's offended where their name is. But we've got Brad Jerzak, Andre Robbie, Richard Murray, Rainey Childress, Francois Dutoy, Bill Thrasher, Reg Shute, Stuart Johnson, Safi Kaskas, and Paul Gray. That's a pretty serious lineup, if you ask me. So I'm really excited about that coming up. It's going to be great. I can hardly wait. It's going to be a really, I think, deep event. So stay tuned. It's going to be great. All right, what's on today? Let me share something with you. I'm actually showing you a repeat of something I showed a year ago, an interview I did with Keith Giles. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. If you don't know who Keith is, Keith wrote a number of books. Let me show you the books he's written. These are the books that you can see. He's got Jesus Undefeated, Jesus Unexpected, Jesus Unforsaken, Jesus Untangled, Jesus Unbound, Jesus Unveiled, and Jesus Unarmed. Ooh. Now, how the Prince of Peace disarms our violence. Oh, yeah. So again, it's pretty intense stuff. I got to know Keith 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now. Maybe it's 2 years ago, and I joined this thing called Square One, as in going back to square one, the journey of deconstruction. And I saw the list of topics, and I thought, deconstruction, I didn't need to learn more about deconstruction, and yet I learned lots. But what I was most excited for, listen to this, was the rebuild, the renovation project, the rebuilding, which is really, really cool. So he became a friend at the right time. I was part of his very first Square One group, so that led to a group called Square Two, which got into some other really heavy-duty topics, and Keith interviews all kinds of teachers and leaders. And then Square Three is just a community. That's us chatting through topics that each person wants to. I've not been able to join that much lately for Square 3 because the time they do it is on Sundays, and I kind of work Sundays. Most of them don't. So I'm bummed that I can't be part of that. But it is what it is right now. And so I wanted to show off an interview with Keith that I think you're going to love. It's an interview on end times. This is not the end times. Why am I bringing this up now? Well, honestly, I'm I'm stunned at the world today, especially the religious world, and even people that I thought had a reasonable mind or a reasonable way of thinking. I'm stunned at how many are running to this concept of all the stuff going on. The COVID is a conspiracy. It's not real. The vaccine, oh, it's a way to put a microchip into you. Ooh, it's the mark of the beast. All this is we're not going to be able to buy and sell. See, it's being mandated. So now, oh no, they're telling us what to do. They're trying to control us. Listen, people, I'm sorry, but look down through history. If you think this whole thing that's going on is a conspiracy of government control, every country, everywhere, at all times, throughout history, has always had power things. Here, if you're going to live in this country, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's not a new thing. And no, we don't want to get all intense here. But I'm sorry, a lot of the complaints I'm hearing, they're first world problems. Like, really? Okay, I gotta be careful I don't rant on what the topics are, because I have my opinion and I have good friends who have an opposite opinion. So I don't want the opinion to be the issue. But here's what ticks me off. It's when church people take the situation and apply the biblical narratives incorrectly. That ticks me off. And I used to do it, unfortunately, because I just didn't know. So I now know there's a better menu of understanding when it comes to end times theology of what's happened. What is end times? End times is, if you don't know what that is, that's a term used often by the church to define the end of the world or what's going to happen at the very end, all that stuff. So there's a couple lenses out there. I'm not going to get into all the lenses, but this interview with Keith, I think you're going to enjoy. I enjoyed it a year ago. I think it was last September I shared it. And Red Shoot and I did one. If you look below in the comment or in the description, you're going to see a link to a end times playlist. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 messages that I've compiled over the last couple of years on end times. My very first one was, it's called A Hope-Filled Perspective on End Times. And I was scared that Sunday. Holy crap. Honestly, I was shaking in my boots because I'm about to share something I have never shared before, even though I fully believe it. I cannot, if you know me, I can't teach something I don't believe. And if I'm wrestling with something, I'm honest about it every time. An old friend, we don't talk now, but an old friend struggled with certain aspects of growing in grace, going deeper and deeper and deeper, but never taught or shared on it until probably a couple of years after studying. Well, what do we see today? We see people seeing a meme and boom, they start talking about it. They hear one video, ooh, and then they start preaching this message of whatever they don't really fully know or are grounded in. And I'm only seeing this now. I've been a pastor for 30 years, and it's only now I see how important it is not just to do popcorn preaching where ooh, there's a cool topic, I'm going to preach on that. Oh, boy. And I may do that once in a while, but not as a pattern. So this conversation today, number one, we are not in the end times, okay? We are in the kingdom. This is the kingdom time. The kingdom of Christ has arrived, and it is growing and will fill the whole earth. Honestly, if you're starting to misuse certain texts and say, this world's going to come crumbling, I can see where some of that comes from, but most of those texts you can dig into a bit better and find a more hope-filled perspective. So look if this interests you today, go back and look at that playlist, and you'll see the 2 hope-filled perspectives on end times, part 1 and 2. Red Shoot is an interview or comes and does a message as well, and it's really good. It's a great compliment in addition to what I was sharing. And then a couple messages, I taught on that. And then I've done 2 episodes on Still Growing in Grace here. This is a repeat. So let's just jump into this. I hope you like it. Let's see who's saying hi here. Sandy. Hey, good morning, Sandy. Yeah, I think you wrote that excited for all when I was talking about the conference coming up. And then Marianne. Hey, Marianne, say hi to your husband, please. Great to see you on watching. And unless your husband's hijacking, it's really you. I love it. And then Marianne in Australia. Yes. Hey, Marianne, Stuart Johnson is going to be one of my guests on a forgiveness conference coming up. You'll hear about it really soon. As soon as the poster's ready, as soon as the Eventbrite link is ready, we're going to open up registrations for that. It's going to be good. It'll be by donation only. Yes, it's free, but please, make a small donation to help us cover the cost of all the work involved in this. We're not trying to charge an exorbitant amount of money for this. But, kids got to live. And I love it. And if you're enjoying this program, support it. If you hear other teachers, support them. Because getting, the gospel's free, but getting it out is not free. So anyway, there we go. I want to get into this interview. So let's just dig in, and I hope you'll enjoy this. Alrighty, hello and welcome, Keith Giles. Thanks for taking time to join me. I've gotten to know you in this last year. It's only been a year, and God put you in my path at a really, really good time. So it's been a lot of fun getting to know you, know your heart. I think one of the things I appreciate most, honestly, I haven't told you this yet, but the authenticness of your heart and your search for truth and wanting others to see a better gospel. That's what I've seen. I love it. So that's why I resonate with you and all the stuff you do. So
thank you.
That's all.
Thank you.
Where are you from, and what do you do? What's on your plate right now? We'll do this quick.
Yeah, okay. I'll try to do it quick. Well, I'm born in Tennessee, raised in Texas, lived 25 years in California, lived 1 year in Idaho, just moved back to El Paso, Texas a year ago. So I'm kind of from all over. And what do I do for a living? Well, at the moment, what I do for a living, the last 2 years, I guess, I've been full-time author, doing some online teaching based on some of my books. I write blogs, I do a podcast.
Teach courses?
Yeah, teach some online courses, yeah. Where it's how you and I met, this Square One class I was doing. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. I kind of get paid to do all the things I love to do and would do anyway, actually. So.
What'd you do before that? You were pastoring, I believe.
Yes. So, yes, I was licensed and ordained as a Southern Baptist pastor about 30-something years ago and served off and on. Yeah, I know. It's actually, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm recovering.
I'm kidding.
I'm not. I'm serious. But also was part of the Vineyard Church movement in California for a while. We planted a church there. My wife and I with some friends of ours. And it was, it was a good experience, but we walked away from that and started this little house church thing that lasted for about 11 years in California. And the vision for that was to give away everything to the poor in the community and not keep any money for ourselves. And that's when I got a job. I worked as a copywriter in an in-house marketing agency for a while, for about 11 years. And yeah, so that was our experience back in California, and it was really sweet.
Okay, cool. Well, you've recently written a book. I think your latest book, I believe, is called Jesus Unexpected. So let me just pull that up on the screen. That is the cover of the book. Forward is by Baxter Kruger. Imagine that. That's amazing. So Jesus Unexpected, ending the end times to become the second coming. Do you want to explain that?
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of a different vision of the end times, which is why I felt like I needed to write this book. I was raised in that whole end times thing about, everybody else remembers the Left Behind series, but I'm before that. Prior to that, it was The Thief in the Night.
That's me.
Yeah, me too.
Oh yeah,
really,
Distant
really
Thunder,
bad.
You name it. Scare the hell out of you.
Oh yeah, they're horrible 70s, bad, no budget, basically, no budget.
That guillotine image.
Oh, it's bad. But anyway, but it's the same idea. It just strikes this total fear. And I was raised with a lot of fear around this whole idea of the second coming, which is the opposite of what I think we should have. Why would we be afraid that Jesus was going to come back or whatever? But it just created this fear of being left behind and the tribulation and the Antichrist and, the mark of the beast and all these things. And so it really gave me a lot of peace when I started really studying this topic of biblical prophecy in the end times, et cetera, for myself. And really only probably maybe like 3 years ago, I thought I saw something in the scriptures that no one had ever shown me before. And I got really excited, like, whoa, it really is good news. I think there actually is a very positive message we should take from the scriptures on this topic. And it's not the typical thing that we hear most of us grew up with hearing.
Wow. That's amazing and timely, because the reason I wanted to chat with you on this video, I want to share a portion of this on my Sunday morning message, because I wanted to find out from you if you're hearing the same thing that I am. I'm hearing a lot of fear among believers or people who call themselves Christians. And what they're saying with this COVID news and this idea of a vaccination and this chip and the mark of the beast, oh, the end times are coming, and the rapture's coming. And people are throwing their hands up with either fear or hope, as in, let's get everyone destroyed so Jesus can come. And I'm thinking, this is a very bizarre way to see your fellow person.
Yes.
It seems very unloving and fear-driven. Are you seeing the same kind of thing?
Oh, exactly. No, that's exactly what I see. And that's really one of the reasons why I felt like I needed to get this book out there, because I feel like Christians, if we are being motivated by fear, if we are letting fear motivate us and manipulate us, yeah, we're not really focused on the things that Jesus wants us to be focused on.
So what do you do with those folks that are throwing a barrage? They have a prepared wheelbarrow of Bible verses. They just there, and you're supposed to interpret all those verses they paste on Facebook or on Twitter. Say, here, this is my answer, and it's just a Bible verse, as if you're supposed to understand what it means.
Yeah.
What are you sensing is the biggest problem going on right now with that kind of stuff?
Well, here the biggest problem I think we have that in the American church, especially in the West, yeah, you're in Canada, so not just in America,
similar.
but yeah, in the West, yeah. There's what I discovered was that the version of the end times story that I accepted, that is all this fear-based, left behind, thief in the night stuff, it actually is only as new as 1830. And so that means for 1,830 years, Christians around the planet did not believe this, did not accept this, weren't setting dates, weren't expecting, any minute now Jesus is coming back. And that's a shock to me. Like, okay. So basically, I talk about in the book, I kind of outline the history of how we got this, where this came from. It isn't that people read the scriptures and said, oh, look, this is what's going to happen, in the end. It's really this guy, John Nelson Darby, in England around 1830. It's a much more convoluted history. I'll just simply say he is the guy that basically cobbled this idea together, popularized it, brought it to America. It got accepted initially by people like D.L. Moody, then Schofield, who started the Schofield, published the Schofield Reference Bible with Darby's End Times Rapture
Notes were all in there, yep.
Yes. And Darby started preaching, and others started preaching this in churches and in revivals, and it became a popular movement. So in other words, the average Christian just heard this and said, oh my gosh, this sounds great. And they just bought into it hook, line, and sinker. Yep. And it sort of started spreading throughout the culture. Until fast forward to today, it's the only way Christians can think about the end times now is in this way of thinking. And what I'm trying to do in my book is to show people these verses of scripture you're talking about. If you really look at them, they're not describing this sort of thief in the night, left behind story. That really isn't what it's talking about at all. And number one, that should give you some hope that, okay, this narrative I've been told, it's all about fear and all about this, these horrible things that are going to happen in the future any minute now, that they're really not. You can rest easy. You don't need to worry about these things at all. And that actually, not only do you not need to worry about something, I want to give you some hope and some vision for some really awesome, exciting things that are good that you can step into that are much, much better. I mean, it's much more walking in line with who Jesus was, what he was about, what he called us as the body of Christ to be about. That's what I want to do, is replace this fear with some hope, and really just help you see your role in what God is doing right now.
Yeah, I'm finding that I grew up with that same late great Planet Earth stuff, Thief of the Night, all those movies, and then every single evangelism tool was about, this is about Jesus coming back. Are you going to be ready? Are you going to be taken away in the rapture? So rapturism was a huge motivation. In fact, I was so dumb as a grade 7 student, grade 6. And I was heading to a new school. And as a grade 6 kid heading into grade 7 at a different school, I said, hey guys, if I don't see you next year, it's because I got raptured. It's like that kind of deep, intense belief, and I believed it.
Yeah.
But then I had people start to speak another idea, another perspective that I'd never heard before.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the name of the book, but there's an old one called Days of Vengeance. I forget who wrote that, but he wrote another book before that called, oh darn, I have it on my shelf. When I remember it, I'll tell you. But something Little. I think his last name's maybe Little. But either way, he died young. He only was like 44 years old when he died, and he was teaching about an amillennialistic view that I'd never heard of. And I remember reading one chapter to my wife in bed one night 20 years ago. 20. And it sounded like so much hope. I said, "Oh my goodness, this is good." But then I ended up on the back shelf. But I never visited End Times again until a buddy of mine, a Canadian in British Columbia, Jan-Ego Gulbrandsen, forced me to sit down and listen to a guy named Jonathan Welton. And I listened to his stuff, and that just shot me forward. I found out there was like Lynn Hiles was teaching on things like this. And then I bumped into you as well. But this theme had been running for a while. There was an undercurrent of a better message, a better understanding than what I had been told. Yes. And people, we just default to what we've been told until something better or a crisis happens.
That's right. And this is part of, this is true of, you and I could just replace the topic of end times with many other topics, and it's the same story, right? We're raised, we're indoctrinated, really. We're not taught. Mm-hmm. We are indoctrinated, and we're told this is the only way to think of whatever this is, whatever this doctrine is. And so you grew up thinking, well, that there's only one Christian way of thinking about whatever this is, until you find out, oh no, there's at least one, maybe two or three other Christian ways based on Scripture, and sometimes even historically Christian ways. In other words, the church in the first 400 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, this is what they thought and what they believed. It's different from what we believe now. But to learn that, oh, there are other ways of seeing and thinking about these topics. I mean, it should give you some hope and to make you go, well, all right, well, maybe there's something else to this story.
David Chilton is the author.
Yes, David Chilton. Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
So that was the guy.
There's a guy named Ken Gentry. I think he has a book called Before Jerusalem Fell. That's similar, kind of along those lines too.
So what would you say to somebody who is well steeped in the traditional thinking of end times, that are afraid right now? Because the point of this series that I'm trying to get through is to bring hope. So let's not live from fear. Let's change our minds first about the hope of Christ. And what's your first typical response? How do you respond to people like that?
Well, I guess a couple things. One would be, again, you and I are old enough that we've lived through several returns, apocalypse, right, second comings. I literally still have a copy of 88 Reasons Why Christ Will Return in 1988. I still have it. And so I guess one thing I would do is in a conversation with somebody, as you described, would be to remind them, that here's one thing that all of these end times prophecy authors and Bible teachers and Bible prophecy experts have in common. They've all been wrong 100% of the time. I mean, think of it from that perspective. All of them have this in common. They've all been 100% wrong every time. And yet, it doesn't hurt their popularity. They could put another book out today.
I know, because they wrote the book 89. He rewrote that book.
There was, yeah. And so understand that there are people profiting on this topic. They understand that we have an appetite for it. We want to know the future. We want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. We feel like the Bible is some kind of a code book that if we could just crack the code of Revelation or Daniel or something, we would suddenly know what's going to happen tomorrow, and it'll all make sense to us, right? Mm-hmm. But again, anyone who's ever tried to do this has always been wrong all the time. Always. They've always said dates. They've been wrong every time. The Antichrist is Gorbachev. No, it actually isn't. It's Gaddafi. No, it isn't. No, Saddam Hussein. No, it isn't. It's always picked. It wasn't even Hitler, for goodness sake. I mean, no one fit that mold better than Hitler.
That was the Pope. Remember when it was the Pope?
Yeah, exactly. It's the Pope. And so again, playing this game of sort of trying to guess who these characters are and map current events to something in the Scriptures, it never leads to anything good or positive. People have lost their faith. They've lost their jobs. They've given up opportunities because, well, why bother? Why take that transfer? Why take that promotion? Why go to college? Why
have kids? Because Jesus is coming back soon. So, hey, I can't believe the stuff people have given up.
Yeah, and for what I feel like, too, is just even in a broader sense, if you haven't done something that extreme, here's what I think, and almost every Christian who buys into this theology, this is kind of what the majority of us end up doing, is we end up doing this. We're twiddling our thumbs, waiting for Jesus to come back and fix things. Which, again, Jesus specifically tells us multiple times not to do that, not to sit around being idle and doing nothing. And we wouldn't ever say that that's actively my plan. But in a way, if we're always expecting and waiting for Jesus to come back any minute now, any day now, and he's going to fix everything, then it kind of does paralyze us. It kind of keeps us in this stasis where, why do I need to bother about this problem or that problem? Why feed the poor? Why try to help these people? Why you know what I mean? Because, well, it's all going to burn anyway, and Jesus is going to fix it any day now.
Doesn't that go for the environment too? Can you see the anti-environment sentiment here?
Yes. Yeah, it's all going to burn. I've heard people flat out say that. Why? Which, again, contradicts completely what God says in Genesis. He gives us responsibility for the earth. He doesn't tell us to abuse it, right? He tells us to be responsible, to care for it. And part of caring for it is, yes, we're gonna take care of it and not trash it. So yeah, this theology ends up doing a whole lot of things that I think are not really good if we buy into it. And really, I think really prevents us from stepping into who we really are, what we're really supposed to be about.
Do you think there's also this sense of I'm more right than you and I need to stay more right than you because I have the most up-to-date information, and that's causing half the fights on the internet?
Oh, of course. I mean, we play that game with all kinds of theology, right? I'm right, you're wrong. You're a heretic because you disagree with me. And what you end up doing, what you're essentially saying is, I can't be right. I can't be wrong about anything. All my theology, I am completely right, and there's no possible way I'm wrong about anything. And because you disagree with me, and I'm not wrong, well, you're the one who's in trouble. You're the heretic, or you're the false teacher, or you're the person who's being led astray. And that's just not a healthy way of thinking or acting or behaving, right? A more honest way, a humble way would be to say, I've been wrong before. I'm probably wrong about a couple of things now. I'll be wrong again in the future. I'm not so worried about proving I'm right or that you're wrong. Maybe I might learn something from you if I listen to you, right? And that puts us in a different posture.
Yeah, the posture. We're expanding our understanding. So to say I am right and this is what I've always believed, that person scares me. Because they've never changed their belief because they got their cute Western cubby hole of belief. So you don't have to challenge it. You don't even have to think about it because that's what it is. That's it, done. And it's finalized. And yet the mystery is gone. The idea of much more and better and a wider love of God is applicable to this world that we don't understand. So I think it's scary. In your book, I haven't read the book yet because it's in the mail on its way to me because I've ordered it. So I can't cheat and go through the index. Sure. But I'd love to have you summarize a couple of the key points that I think would be encouraging to people hearing this of why not to be afraid. One of the things I'm going to be talking about tomorrow when I do this message, I don't know when this part will air, is I'm talking about Nebuchadnezzar's dream when Daniel has to interpret the statue made out of the 5 elements and how it represents kingdoms and so on. What I've learned so far is the top kingdoms, they've never been disputed by any theological group. Everyone agrees. That's the Babylonians. That's the Romans. But everybody disagrees on the feet. There's a huge disagreement. Is that addressed in your book at all?
You know what? I do not address that exact dream. I do deal with Daniel, but the main thing I deal with in Daniel, and I have a whole chapter, a very long chapter on Daniel's 70 weeks, the 70 weeks of Daniel.
Okay.
But I think that's still a relevant topic because that dream is talking, I believe, about Christ and his kingdom and the reality that we're living out today. Yes.
I've come to see that rock that was made from not human hands. I forget the right wording of it.
Yeah, it's a rock not cut by human hands.
Yes. Yeah. So to me, that's the incarnate Christ arriving, hitting the earth at the right time. So if those kingdoms are in sequence, which they are, then the 10 provinces, 10 toes of Rome, that's now divided, that's made out of clay and iron, it's mixed, so it's already a lot of crap going on. It arrives. and
Yes.
it just topples over all these kingdoms. The crisis come. What I have found is people forget to keep reading or listen to the end of the dream. The rock, and you guys mentioned this in your other thing the other day, but the rock then grows and fills and covers the whole earth. So
Yes.
the kingdom has come, and it happened right at that time of the Roman Empire. So
Yes.
to me, it's like, hey, that means love wins. That
Yes, it
means
is.
his kingdom will not end, and we're not going to see an utter destruction of our global universe and blah, 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 and a remaking of it. I think much healing is coming. There's more hope coming, but nobody wants to see that. Have you heard anything like that about that dream? Is that familiar?
No, I think you're dead on. You're right. And like you said, I was very blessed to have a conversation with Baxter Kruger, Paul Young, and Brad Jerzak. Kruger wrote the foreword to my book, and Brad, actually, I wrote the epilogue to my book because directly Brad Jerzak suggested something, and I was like, okay, I got to write this epilogue. Thanks to Brad. And Paul Young was also really encouraging me. He read an advanced copy of the book, and he was like, go, go, go. This is great. So anyway, I was able to get the three of them together, and all four of us talking together. And in that conversation, we brought up that dream. I forgot which one brought it up. Probably Brad or Paul. But it's a parallel, that image, like you said. So two things I think are happening in Daniel, in that dream and in the 70 weeks of Daniel dream. Both dreams are about from starting with Daniel's time, moving forward until the coming of the Messiah, right? So these are sort of signs or things to look forward to, or what's going to happen leading up to it. And then when the Messiah comes, this is what's going to happen when he shows up. So in the dream you're talking about, the part that's emphasized in that dream is how this tiny rock, not cut from human hands, and it's a small, like almost like a pebble, hits this massive statue and just shatters it completely.
Yep.
And then again, like you said, then it grows to cover the entire earth. So it's almost like it replaces the earth. It overshadows the earth itself, right? This is a parallel, image that Jesus uses twice. Once when he talks about the kingdom, he goes, what shall I compare the kingdom of God? The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds, the tiny seed. And that yet when it grows to cover the entire garden and eventually becomes this massive bush and tree that all the birds, of the field have their nests. So it's this, again, the idea of something very, very small that eventually grows and slowly overtakes everything and gives life to everything. And then the parallel to that is when Jesus says the kingdom of God is like a small pinch of yeast, just a tiny pinch of yeast that a woman put into a large lump of dough. And that, again, over a slow amount of time, like overnight or whatever, that small bit of yeast eventually covers that entire lump of dough until the entire lump of dough, is covered with, infected or filled, whatever I'm going to say, with the yeast. And all three of these are pictures of the kingdom of God. That's what Jesus came to tell us about was, and again, Revelation echoes as well when it says in Revelation that the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdom of our God. And that's that same idea that Christ 2,000 years ago inaugurated and initiated this tiny little thing. It looked so small. It was him and like 11 guys, couple of people, half of them scattered when he was crucified. And then it just slowly over time. So fast forward almost 2,000 years, and now this kingdom of God has started to cover the earth. And it's in every nation on the planet. Every tongue and tribe and nation know of the name of Christ. The kingdom of Christ is expanding. The good news of the gospel of the kingdom is expanding. And so then going back to the Daniel picture and those other two pictures, what we know about those pictures that were given is that it's inevitable. One day the kingdom of Christ will take over the world. That's what's going to happen. It's a good story. It's a happy ending. Yeah. It's not a terrible thing. It's not awful, right? It's a good story. And so, we need to embrace that part of the story.
Somebody's going to rebut you right away and say, yeah, but Revelation says that the sword will come. He's going to kill everybody. It'll be a sea of blood from all the people he's killed, and it's not going to end well. Like, do you address that in the book?
I do. Yeah, I cover Revelation in great detail. So I try to hit all the major, Daniel, 70 weeks, Olivet Discourse, First Thessalonians,
Matthew
and then
25.
the Revelation passage, and passage in Revelation. So here's the thing about Revelation. This is really our biggest problem, and it's the reason why many early church fathers voted not to include the canon in Revelation in the canon because not that it's not a good, text. It's just that it's so misunderstood and therefore abused that it's done in many ways more harm than good, I think, to the church. So I think if we properly understand the book of Revelation, it can be a wonderful thing for us. Unfortunately, again, the story we're talking about, the Left Behind, End Times, even the night stuff, Revelation has been used to tell a version of the story that the original author of Revelation did not intend to create fear and dread and something out there in the future that's going to be this horrible, horrible thing. So let's just back up a bit and let's reframe Revelation before we get into that question. And I think Brian Zahn, by the way, Brian Zahn has a beautiful passage in his book, Sinners in the Hands of a Loving God, where he addresses the book of Revelation. I quote him in my book because I think he just does a beautiful job of this, of saying, that when you're young, you come to Revelation, you're told it's a book about what's going to happen in the future. Mm-hmm. And he goes, then I figured out I was wrong. That's not what it's about. So what is it about? Revelation is actually a beautiful metaphor. Let's just admit it. It's a metaphor. It's not about literal 10-headed dragons with 20 horns and 6 eyes coming out of a bottomless pit. Like, that isn't literal. Those are all metaphors, figures, images. And what in general Revelation is wanting us to get is it's telling us a very, very flowery story of how Christ's kingdom subverts empire. Now, specifically, it's about how Christ's kingdom subverts the Roman Empire. And so you want to get technical, that's sort of the specific story that it's telling. But in general, because it's very figurative and allegorical and metaphorical, it's the kind of a story that you could say is, it's repeated every time any empire rises and falls. But the empire of Christ continues, as we said. It started real small 2,000 years ago, and it's only growing and expanding, and nothing will ever stop it. Whereas other empires, Rome and pick one, any empire that's ever existed, they grow, they get huge, they're massive, and then they collapse. And that just keeps happening over and over and over again. And so Revelation, I think, is intended to be a picture for us of how we, as members and citizens of the kingdom of Christ, can subversively overthrow the empires of this world, and how it's inevitable. Christ's kingdom will inevitably take over. So if we can approach Revelation from that sort of a general, again, from that perspective, then I think we can understand it better. It's not, I don't think Revelation is telling us about our future in any specific way. Mm-hmm. Not that bad things won't happen, but it's not the end of the world. It's not like, oh, game over, shut out the lights, it's all gonna end. Because they use apocalyptic language, apocalyptic hyperbole. Jesus uses it in the Olivet Discourse, but so did Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel when they were talking about the destruction of Babylon or Egypt or Edom or even Jerusalem. They use the exact same language. The sun not giving its light, the moon turning to blood, fire in the sky, and the scroll being the sky being rolled back like a scroll, and the stars falling from the sky, and weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. The exact same language. Yeah. But they weren't talking about the end of the world. They were talking about the end of Babylon, or the end of Edom, or the end of Jerusalem, or the end of Egypt. And so again, we need to back up and recognize that's the language is being used is not really describing end of world events.
So is it fair to say that most people have been caught in misunderstanding end of the world stuff are Jesus' own words in Matthew 24? Is that addressed in your book?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes.
Because when that hit me, my jaw hit the floor and I could never unsee what I saw.
Yes.
Tell us about that real quick.
Yeah, I'll tell you the main thing about that, because again, that's probably the longest chapter in the book is the Olivet Discourse, because I go verse by verse through, side by side, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, because all three of them contain it, and are almost verbatim, but the parts where they differ, they slightly differ in the story, that actually unlocks some of the meaning, because Luke says some things more plainly than Matthew and Mark do, but then they come back and track together again. But yeah, the main thing to get about the Olivet Discourse is that it's not about the end of the world. And the clue is at the beginning of the conversation. How does the whole thing start? Well, Jesus and the disciples are leaving the temple, And the disciples stop and go, oh, Jesus, look at this temple. Isn't it amazing? It's just incredible. It's so beautiful. And it's just the greatest thing ever. And Jesus says, a day's coming soon when not one of these stones will be left upon the other. And they're like, whoa, what? Jesus, explain to us, tell us, when will these things be? What things? The temple being destroyed. And so everything he says after that is about specifically something that he says will happen in their lifetime. He says, many of you standing here will be alive to see everything. He says, everything I'm saying will come to pass before you die. So that means everything. That means there's nothing about that conversation that's, oh, well, that part's in the future or the end of time or the end of the world. No, it's all about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, which was fulfilled about 40 years after he said it in very phenomenal ways. And that's one thing I do in the book as well. What's missing in our New Testament is the passages about how it happened, right? That's partly why it's easy to take those, like Jesus saying this will happen in the future, and it sounds so amazing and cataclysmic and apocalyptic. We think, well, I guess that never happened because no one ever saw that happen. So you're left to believe that it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So what I do in my book is I look at things like Josephus, Tacitus, some Roman historians in the first century around the time of AD 70 who describe the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. And it's mind-boggling how similar it is to what Jesus says is going to happen in the end. And these guys weren't Christians. They were either pagan or they were Jewish, pro-Roman, historians. They were trying to make the dots connect for Jesus in the Olivet Discourse. Probably didn't even know there was an Olivet Discourse. So, but seeing how those things were fulfilled, I think is very helpful.
Do you address the mark of the beast?
Oh, yes. There's a whole thing about the mark of the beast. Yes. Good. Yes.
Did it have something to do with that temple place we had to do a sacrifice and put ash on you so you can buy?
Yeah, it does. I do reference that. Yes.
Good.
And the number, the name of the beast, and who that is, and who that was, and even why. Here's the thing. Even why John seems to use like very cryptic language, like when he says things like, the number of his name is 660 and 6. Let the reader understand. Or even at the end of the book when he says, and if anyone adds to or takes away anything in this book, may God add to him the plagues written. Well, again, we got to keep in mind, he was a political prisoner under Roman, he was basically under Roman guard.
He wrote that in Revelation, though, right?
He wrote that in Revelation.
So he's talking about that book.
That book, because, again, it's a letter. Listen, if I was arrested by the U.S. government.
People think it means the whole Bible.
Right, they think it means the whole Bible, right. But so yeah, like if I was arrested by the U.S. government for saying things that they thought were undermining, the government, and now I'm in jail and I'm on 24/7 guard, and I'm writing letters to you and other people. Don't you think they're going to read those letters and censor them because they already see me as somebody who's like, instigating revolution and whatever. So they're going to be so. John knows that. That's why John says, hey, by the way, he's talking to the Roman censor reading his letter. If you add to or take away anything in this letter, God is going to do these things to you. He's trying to scare them into not messing with his letter before it goes out.
Use the God card.
Just understanding why he uses certain language, why he talks the way he talks. And then again, there's no more confusing book in the Bible than Revelation. But I think if we can at least see it in general, as I said, as a book about how Christ's kingdom subverts the kingdoms of the world, and how he did.
Isn't it supposed to be a revelation of Jesus, the whole book?
Yes, exactly. It's a revelation of Jesus, of Christ.
Not a revelation of fear.
Or the end of the world. And not even, And it doesn't. Here's the thing about Revelation 2. It doesn't end on a scary, sad, woeful note. It ends on a beautiful note of this New Jerusalem, and the gates are never shut, and even though the nations who warred against Christ are outside the gates, Jesus says, come, anyone who's thirsty, come and drink freely from the waters of life. It's a welcoming, hopeful, all things made new kind of a picture at the end. So again, all of it's pointing to something really, really good, not something bad.
So let me ask you one trick question, because I don't know if it's in the book or not. The idea then of a second coming of Jesus. How do we perceive that? What would you say to somebody asking, well, then maybe Jesus hasn't come. Maybe he is already here. If that's true, is there something else coming? Like, what do you say to that?
Well, now you're getting to that's sort of the hook of the book there. That's, because the subtitle is Ending the End Times. That's like the first half of the book, to become the second coming. And so what I talk about in the book is, another perspective to how we think about the second coming. The idea that, like for example, in John 14, when Jesus tells the disciples, it's better for you if I go away. Well, we should think about that for a second, because again, most of us as Christians, we don't believe that. We think, it's going to be so much better when Jesus comes back. But he said, no, it's better if I go away. Well, what does he mean by that? In what ways is it better? And I think if we really understand what he meant by that, we would agree with him. You know what? You're right. It is better. And so I go into much more detail on that. And what I want us to get a picture of, I think one of the key verses that for me is a verse in Romans. It's Romans chapter 8. And where Paul talks about something that all of creation is groaning and longing to happen. And it's not the second coming of Jesus. Now we do, again, the church often is like, oh, Jesus, we're just waiting for you to come back. Again, we're waiting for you to come back and fix everything. But that's not what Paul says. Paul says in Romans 8, all of creation is yearning and groaning and longing for the sons and daughters of God to be revealed. That's us. In other words, all creation is waiting for us to wake up and get it. We are the incarnation of Christ in the world. Christ is already in the world, in the flesh, in you and in me. We're his hands, we're his feet. We're the body of Christ. That's what they call the church. We're his body in the world, directed by the Spirit, directed by the head, which is Christ. But we're his body in the world. Here's a crazy thing to think about. There is more of Christ in the world today than there was 2,000 years ago. There was only one Jesus 2,000 years ago. But how much of Christ is in the world today? Millions, all over the planet, all at the same time.
And yet people think the world's getting worse because they use the newspaper as their headlines. I think it's getting better.
It is.
But it's really hard for people to wrap their heads around that.
That's right. You're exactly right. And if you really wanted to dig into depth on that, actually, it is the truth. Trust me, you wouldn't want to live in the Middle Ages. You wouldn't want to live, during some of the most violent plagues and torture and just, people enslaved, and it was horrible, dirty, filthy, just awful. Trust me, we live right now in the best time in history we could possibly live. So things are getting better. Now, it doesn't mean there's not problems around the world, of course. But here's how I like to express it. I don't express it exactly this way in the book, but this is the way I've been trying to think about it and talk about it. That In Times Left Behind, Thief in the Night story that we all grew up with, right? It's this sort of this massive action film, trilogy, explosions, fire, dragons, monsters. Oh, dude, it's such a cool, amazing story. It's why they've tried to make, movies about it for so long. And so in my book, I'm kind of taking that away from you. I'm saying, no, that isn't real. That's not the way it's going to happen. And so when I take that away from people, I've literally had people say to me, well, you just took that away, but like, now what? What am I looking forward to? If I don't have that, what do I have? And this is the way I think is the best way to think of it. Rather than that movie, rather than that story of you sitting in a theater, eating popcorn, watching this amazing story that's going to happen any day now, to think of it like this, I think really this is exactly what the scriptures actually tell us. It's actually as if Jesus is coming to you and handing you a lightsaber and saying, okay, Mike, here's a lightsaber. Do you want to overthrow the empire? Do you want to rescue the princess? Do you want to bring balance to the force? Because we need you. And I want you to your life is now invested in this story, and you're going to jump into the adventure because you have a role to play. Mm-hmm. You have something we need you to accomplish. It's not sitting back and watching something that's going to happen. No, we are all invited into this incredible story, and we actually will get to bring Christ to the world. We actually will get to embody Christ to people around us. And we will, I kind of call it the slow motion second coming of Christ. We are the second coming of Christ. Yeah. As we live out Christ abides in me and I abide in him. that's what we're called to step into. And that's the imagination I want us to get that idea and start, let's run with this. Because that's much more hopeful, right? That's much more exciting.
But I think there's one thing fighting that in believers who have believed the traditional thinking. It's humility, admitting maybe it was wrong. That honestly, because careers have been built on this.
Yes.
Your whole evangelism ministry has been built on this.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. If God hadn't started tearing some stuff apart in me years ago, I would not have come to the place to even understand what David Chilton was saying. By the way, the one I first read was The Great Tribulation that he wrote, and it was fantastic. But that was the beginning. And if I had not heard something in my spirit tell me there's something right about this, whether he's right or not was not the point. There's more to it than what we've been told. Hell was another topic. What? And on and on. So this end times one is one of the biggest ones I think the Western church is struggling with in my world versus, yes, we got a small list because you and I have been talking about deconstruction and we have a great list of stuff. But for end times, I think this is a really, really big one that's causing a lot of fear. So,
especially right now, as you said, I think I couldn't have timed it any better for this book to come out right now because all of a sudden I'm seeing, on Facebook and Twitter and on social media, like you said, is COVID, something, one of the plagues of Revelation, and is if there's a vaccine, will that be the mark of the beast? And the more we buy into that, the more it just creates fear, and fear paralyzes us. I don't think the body of Christ should be paralyzed. Again, we've not been given a spirit of fear. We've been a spirit of love and of power and of a sound mind. So let's do our best to move in that direction.
That was the other part of my sermon. I went through all that because it's really important. Yeah. Well, thank you. Our time is up. You gave me more time than I asked for. But thanks for this. I'm going to share this in its entirety, probably next week, Wednesday, in my Still Growing in Grace program that I do weekly. But I'm going to show part of this tomorrow morning. And that part of Daniel where we talk about the two dreams, I think that was really helpful.
Cool.
I'm really anticipating and wanting to read this book when it comes. So I'm going to give you a shout out tomorrow as well on your book. But I think it's great. Thanks for writing it.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, man. Love you, man.
Thanks for the time. And I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.
All right. Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Wow. I hope you enjoyed that. I loved hearing that again. It's like, oh my goodness. I've had so many awesome interviews and conversations. I never thought of repeating some of them. But they're so good. So I'll tell you this, that was great. And probably a good reminder of our time today, that the idea of fear, it does not feed the spirit. It drains the spirit. By the way, I got to give Marianne Stevenson in Australia a quick shout out. I saw your comment when he was talking about the second coming, and you wrote, "We are his second coming." I thought, okay, I kind of had a hunch of what you meant, and then as the interview went on, there it was, and it's like you identified right away and called it out, and I thought that was just brilliant. Way to go. If the concept of we are his second coming is new to you, that's great. It's not new. It's just new to you. And there are many things that are new to us that we just don't know yet. And so I was thinking of the people that I'm frustrated with, not just in theology, but during COVID. A thought hit me just about 5 minutes ago. When you're walking down the street and you see a blind person with a dog or a white cane, do you yell at them for being blind? No. Do you get angry because they're blind and they can't see where they're going? No. Maybe that's a lesson for all of us, to not be angry at blind people for being blind. Think about that. That would reduce a lot of our expectations and frustrations with people we're ticked off with, even those that do not see COVID or vaccines the same way we do. And I'm not saying that everyone else is blind that has a different opinion than me, but they're not seeing through the same lens. And so we can't get mad at people for not seeing what we see. And when it comes to end times and the love of God, the finished work of the cross, if people can't quite see it that way, like I used to get angry at my church that I grew up with, thinking that church, man, they taught me some pretty bad stuff.
I can't do that because I found Jesus there. Just because a lot of my foundation stuff was rooted in some mixed theology doesn't mean Jesus didn't speak love and grace to me. They were great people back then. I had to take time to really think that through. There's some people that oozed the love of Christ while teaching hellfire and brimstone. How does that work? I don't know, but let's stop judging. Oh my goodness. So let's, by the way, the reason you couldn't see the title of the book is because I, just before we came on, I edited the video because it was really quite small. So I made it bigger, but I didn't realize it would blow out this. So this is the book that Keith wrote called Jesus Unexpected, Ending the End Times to Become the Second Coming. Love this. So, in fact, I'll show you the introduction. See if I can do this, because then you can go back and pause the video and you can read the table of contents, because to me, table of contents is critical. So that's what that is. And then I've got Jesus Unbound, which is liberating the Word of God from the Bible. Okay, that's what this one is. I won't go through the index with that one. And that one was forward by Brian Zahn. The previous one was by Baxter Kruger. This one's called Jesus Unveiled, Forsaking Church as We Know It for an Ecclesia as God Intended. I think I'm probably going to take a look at this one. I haven't read this one yet, but I have it because I'm going through some rethinking of what is the church, really. And then Jesus Undefeated, Condemning the False Doctrine of Eternal Torment. Brad Jerzak wrote the foreword of this. So if you want a good book on hell, then again, he wrote 7 books. I showed you the picture at the very beginning. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. I believe next week we're going to have one more conversation, and I believe it's the U.S. Thanksgiving. Is it this weekend? Is it? I think it might be. I'm not certain, but if it is, oh my goodness. I hope you guys have a great holiday time for those in the U.S. Canadians, we have our Thanksgiving earlier. That's kind of fun. But yeah, and then Christmas is coming up. So we'll see what happens. I might do some repeat, pull some of my favorite interviews and show them throughout December on Wednesdays instead of having fresh, brand new stuff, because I want to work on the conference instead. There's a lot of work that has to be done. Thank you. Yes, Thursday's Thanksgiving. There's a lot of prep and interviews and editing that has to be done in order for this conference to work. So I need December to do it. But I wanted to have it happen in January, because January is a time of stop. All the busy rushing of December and November, and then New Year's, and it's like then we crash, and it's like, okay, we need some encouragement then, and very few people are doing conferences or anything in January. So I thought, okay, I want to do January. 2 years ago, we did a Grace and Grieving event with Paul Young here, and it was a snowstorm night, but that content, maybe I'll show some of that content again. It was so good. But anyway, I look forward to chatting with all of you again. Thank you for the comments and popping in. If you're watching later, make a comment to let us know you're watching. I don't know who's all watching, but it is fun to keep sharing good news. And I just trust that this is, for as long as I get to do this, we'll keep doing this because it's fun and hopefully it's inspirational. That's it for now. I hope you all have a really, really, really great week, and happy Thanksgiving to our U.S. friends, and we'll catch you all soon. Join me next time on Still Growing in Grace for more good news. Enjoy previous episodes by downloading our podcast at growingingrace.ca. You can also visit hopefellowshipycc.com to find our service times and location. If this show has been an encouragement to you, please consider making a donation today at growingingrace.ca and help us keep spreading this good news. Thank you again for tuning in to Still Growing in Grace.